Good afternoon, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Oceanic. Today I'm going to continue with the skin tone glazing. Got some cadmium yellow light mixed up, and I'm just going to hit the highlight side with that, and then probably mix up some darks, alizarin, and maybe a little violet into it to deepen the shadow side as well. And I also wanted to say thank you to everyone that's been supportive of my artwork and the process videos and everything that I put up to try and generate to hawk my art. Anything that Facebook doesn't stifle is usually greeted very warmly by many of you, and I really appreciate that. As you may be able to tell from some of my postings, this is my only social interaction, period. So it means a great deal to me. And Facebook continuously kicking me in the face to block my posts and trample everything that I try to accomplish on this page is frustrating, but all of you are very helpful and encouraging, and that's very much appreciated. Okay, so here we go. Creatures on the planet. These are related. This isn't simply coincidental. Eros and psychedelic states of mind and the impulse towards civilization are all somehow tied together. And I confess, I don't understand how this works, but on the other hand, I haven't solved all the problems I've set myself in this life. This thing about the relationship of sex to the psychedelic experience is extraordinarily challenging. It's not clear what it means exactly, but the sexual response is linked in our ideological machinery to the concept of love, which is an extraordinarily high dimension concept that we give great credence to. I mean, it's the thing which is supposedly makes us different from the rest of nature. That we have concepts like altruism, self-sacrifice, love, and placing ourselves at the disposal of other members of our species. All of this is a complex that I think points toward our future development. I think our future development is to become more erotic, more conscious, and more psychedelic, and that these things feed into each other in a way that is not particularly easy to understand. Clearly, the emergence of consciousness out of the primates has to do with the generalizing of the sexual response. In other words, in most primates, there's an estrus phase, meaning they go into heat and females can conceive in that situation. But then the rest of the time, there's no interest in sex. It falls away. It's all hormonally regulated and driven. We are the only primate that maintains an interest in sexuality year-round. And obviously, this is somehow linked, I think, to the extraordinary cognitive abilities of human beings. Yeah.
I'm involved in researching the human sexual response and EEG patterns and things like this now. And I've just done a complete search of the literature because we're continuing the process of studying that thing. And I've been astounded at the lack of material in the area of human sexuality, physiology of human sexuality. And I'm wondering if you see analogs and corollaries between our response to human sexuality, or lack of response, and the response to hallucinogens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if sex could be made illegal, it would be. If they could find a way to tear it out of your grasp, they would. I mean, it's not been that long ago since the Catholic Church urged people to undress in darkness so that their bodies would not be an occasion for sinful thoughts. The same anxiety that attends the hallucinogens attends sex, except that they can't figure out a way to separate it from the the human experience. So they can't sit in with, ideas like marriage, monogamy, so forth and so on. They can't get rid of it, so they try to diminish its role. The French call orgasm the little death. That's a clear indicator of the kind of anxiety that the dominator mentality brings to even the most pleasurable of human activities. It's felt to be threatening. The whole way in which male dominator psychology relates to women is women are a strange combination of attractive and repellent, because the physiological response is to push you toward having sex. But if that impulse is carried to its completion, there will be this moment of loss of control. There will be, if it works, this moment of necessary surrender and boundary dissolution. And, the dominator's psyche, male or female, is very anxious about that. And the number of people in our society who find it difficult to achieve orgasm, I think, is because our society has placed an enormous premium on never losing control. I'm amazed how rarely you hear people making love. Look at how closely packed we are. And yet, if you hear somebody yelling in orgasm, it's a cause for comment and amusement, because we are incredibly suppressed in our expression of the sexual response, even though we do it. We many times don't do it right. I'm often reminded of the joke about the guy who went to the psychiatrist and said, "Doctor, I think sex is filthy." He said, "Well, it is if you're doing it right." Yes, very good. You.
That brings me to the point of wondering why our society isn't focusing on educating and developing the male as well as the female, and keeping the psychedelics as well as the sexual education more sacred.
Well, I think the society is run by people who don't know what you're talking about. The society is basically run on a very conservative agenda. We are not responding to the crisis. I said this last night. The response to the global crisis is spin doctoring and issuing of phony statistics. Everybody knows that we are destroying the planet, and yet, all this running around talking about free trade. What do people think free trade is, other than the right to peddle junk everywhere? That's what free trade is. Free trade is the right to bring CNN to Turkmenistan. Free trade is the right to sell Hondas in Swaziland. It's a complete cultural level. And yet, to take a position against free trade is not to be terribly recidivist and unenlightened. I think trade should be as difficult as possible. I think it should be very, very hard to move objects across borders, and there should be a de-emphasis on the manufacturing and fabricating of synthetic objects. When you look at capitalism, there are only two things you can do with it. You can either junk it as toxic, fatal, and anti-human, or the products of capitalism must become virtual. If products were made of light rather than matter, it might be possible to save capitalism. But as long as capitalism is the dealing of physical objects, it's a knife poised at the heart of the earth. And the situation is getting worse I think that the whole struggle between capitalism and communism was a shell game and a sham. And that the real struggle ideologically is between capitalism and ecological values that want to preserve the earth. There are two kinds of people: those who don't give a fig for saving the earth, and those who want to save the earth. Now, the people who want to destroy the earth, they have the armies, the engines of propaganda, they own the corporations, the stock, everything. We think it would be no contest, that they're just going to win. The only fly in the ointment is, if they win, everybody dies. And they know that. They know that. I mean, you think you're concerned about the earth. Imagine if you had the illusion that you own the damn thing, how concerned you would be. And in the boardrooms of these Fortune 500 corporations, that's the illusion. They think it's their planet. And they look at the state of their planet, their investment. It's falling to pieces, it's running down, it's being used up. I don't know if we can put the brakes on fast enough to halt this process or not, but that is the dilemma of the age. We are practicing a suicidal cultural style. It's ruining our future, the quality of our environment. Everything is being destroyed by the toxic practice of this cultural style, and yet the message is not being heard. Maybe it will be heard, but at the moment, there's a great gap between the real state of the planet and the responses that are being put in place. So we don't hear, as I said, and I need to do harping on this, but the single fact that the Catholic Church is not cooperating in the limiting of global population, this is a crime against humanity. Nobody is immune from being held responsible for crimes against humanity. Do you think you have to be a Nazi to be guilty? Anybody who commits crimes against humanity is as guilty as the Nazis were. And to tell people in these enormously swollen third world cities that their eternal soul is in jeopardy if they limit their family size is a historic crime of obscene proportions. And yet, if one were to suggest that this be halted, let alone that people who propagate this policy be held to account, it would be thought to be a street corner nut of some sort. Why does that seem so improbable to us? Yeah.
That seems very probable. They could be that 1% of the people who are running and stirring it upset, the group has the power base, can actually sway 90+% of people in probably sleep market. And maybe 7% of us understand that something very strange is going on. A person can do that. You can't let yourself be put against the wall. So are we going to try to respond and speak, but you can't stand it morally. There's something a little different.
I think the only thing you can do is get straight with the people around you and talk about it. And the other thing is, we don't have to be polite. We don't have to be polite. I remember in the 60s, the first time, I was a wide-eyed freshman, and I took a big survey course in anthropology that had people of all freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors in the class. And there were, and this professor, some gray-bearded, great hoary with wisdom, was holding forth, and somebody stood up and said, "Bullshit." And you could just hear a pin drop. And then somebody else stood up and said, "Yes, this is bullshit." And it's like the emperor's new clothes. The whole thing begins to unravel because so much BS is being slung. So, and it's hard to know where to draw the line. But I think we need to be very, very critical of our institutions. I hate this whole Clinton thing, because I don't like people who walk around assured that
light blue to model some of the sky a little more brightly.
This is the good stuff. God forbid we should say anything about that. And lots of not good. It's just some clown trying to stumble through. But if this is people's idea of practical social reform, if this is people's idea of living imagine, we need to limit the Earth's population, back down male births, legalize psychedelics, get rid of atomic weapons, move to a hydrogen economy, so forth and so on. And when they suggest closing an air base near Sacramento, the California papers are full of articles about whether Western civilization can survive the shock or not. Get real, my friends. I mean, there are shocks on the way that will make closing an air base not even register on the meter. Well, the question is about a book I wrote. They deal with this fairly quickly. It's a matter of small embarrassments. I wrote a book called Synesthesia, which you're not likely to find in your local bookstore. It costs about $1,500. It had nothing really to do with me. There is a guy in New York who is famous for making books, single books, and his books go from $45,000 to $75,000. And he came to me and said he wanted to do a project with me. And if I was supply of text, he would set the type and paint the books. And so I did. I supplied 3,000 words of text, and he made a 50-page book called Synesthesia, of which there are 75 copies, and they sell for $1,500 a piece. And if you want one, see me later. I'll give you the name of the gallery where it does this. What is the subject matter? It's a short story about a woman who is thinking a number of things while she puts on her gloves. That sounds 20th century. You mean breaking laws to halt evil? Hey, I'm an old Berkeley artist. I come out of the affinity group I used to belong to. We had a rule, which was you had to phone one bomb threat a day, or you weren't allowed into the inner smoking room of the commune. I agree with Thomas Jefferson, who said you must have a revolution, a regeneration. The American system has been betrayed. I mean, I think America is a very good idea, but weasels have learned how to subvert it, mostly because the people who wrote the American Constitution had no concept of modern mass media. We are not playing on a level playing field. If we were playing on a level playing field, we could solve some of these problems, but the manipulation of information is incredible, and the subtle way in which energy is bled off. I mean, look at what we've been talking about the last 6 months in the United States. How many million words on the Menendez trial? How many million words on the Bartletts? How many million words on the stupid skating trip? These are the things that have been going on in the American mind. Meanwhile, the planet is dying. Nuclear weapons are being sold in the red light district of Frankfurt. Malaria rages, AIDS rages. I mean, we're infantile beyond belief. I mean, the stupidity of the American media and the obsessions that are tolerated. And even intelligent people must tell you their opinion about these things. And who gives a flying fuck about Tanya Harding one way or the other? It should never be mentioned among intelligent people. We don't give a hoot. But because this trivialization of information is endemic, and it makes us, there is a phenomenon going on called, which, can be called many things, but I call it what neoteny is? Neoteny is the preservation of juvenile characteristics into adulthood. There are certain animals which, certain amphibians, which sometimes stay tadpoles their entire life. But if the food supply is rich enough, they cease being tadpoles and they become four-legged amphibians. They will only grow to adulthood if there's sufficient nutrition in the environment to let them make that skin. Well, we are in an environment, an informational environment of such poverty that we can't become adults. We're kept in a state of perpetual infantilism, worrying about skaters, child molesters, and all this other stuff that doesn't amount to anything. Well, the people who are, don't give a hoot about Menendez brothers, are dealing with human race down the drain. And, television. We all know that the average television program is gauged to a 15-year-old mind. But what are the consequences of that? We're creating a population of people who are infantile and mediocre. And yet we call ourselves a democracy. We only have to study democracy 10 minutes and read John Stuart Mill to understand that the precondition for democracy is a sophisticated and educated citizenry. If you have one person, one vote, but no educated citizenry, then you have a mob being led by various icons and images manipulated by fascists. It's a very disturbing situation.
You will be a list of people, especially this weekend, to continue the network?
Well, that's sort of up to the group. I encourage it. I mean, it is tricky, of course, because you have to protect yourself. But I think that building affinity groups, building community is the only way. Gay people, when they came out of the closet, jobs were lost, relationships shattered, families broken up, black people claiming their rights sent a shudder to the whole.
All right, so that gets another layer of highlight on her and a little bit more depth to the gestural work that surrounds her and sort of integrates the two. Before I start detailing the background, which will be probably slow blended, watery details. So that's going to be fun, but it's going to add quite a bit of time to the length of this little video project. But that gets another step on her, and it's looking a little bit better for the day. That's it for the moment. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Oceanic. Thanks again, everyone, and have a good night.